So, hello, my friends. It's nice to be with you again. I've been away for a couple of weeks, out trying to relax and read some books and think a bit. And it's good to be back. And I will tell you what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about aliens and UFOs, if you will. This is something that showed up in my life a long time ago. Back in 1998, I believe it is, I wrote my second book called Out of the Blue, Wildcards and Other Big Future Surprises. And it was engendered by the knowledge that the Y2K problem was looming in a couple of years. And then, uh, some friend of mine said, you got to know about this. And so that spawned a kind of a research project, because in my mind I was looking for events that could dramatically change the direction of humanity and life on this planet. And in particular, I was trying to see if there were benign ones. It's pretty easy to presume and come up with ideas where it's all bloody and you're scared to death, and everybody changes their mind and they say, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore." And those kinds of events have been the principal ones that have driven major changes in history. But it occurred to me that it would be a lot better if we could figure out a way in which, or at least identify some major events or driving forces or whatever it turned out to be, that could produce benign, positive change that would help drive us toward this new world without, spreading blood all over the place. And so I sat down and kind of systematically tried to work my way across and think of every kind of scenario that I could think of that was a big thing that could really, derail the status quo and send things off somewhere else. And as I remember, I started out with something like 150 or so different kind of events, and I wintered it down to about 85 or something. And those were the subject of this book. And I designed a methodology for how you think about about big surprises. I called them wild cards. And so if you use the term wild card in terms of a big surprise or something, it's because it came from that book a long time ago. And so but the idea was these big surprises, how do you think about them? How do you manage your life around them? How do you anticipate them? And I built a whole mechanism and a process by which to do that. But the underlying objective was, again, to try to find out what were the scenarios that were the kind of the smooth path, the smooth water through the rapids that would get you into the new age, the new era, the new whatever. And interestingly, there were only two scenarios that I could find that had any, that were anything like that. And one of them was the Return of the Messiah, and the other one was the E.T. shows up. And for my money, maybe that they're synonymous, right? You never know, depending upon things kind of weird, so you don't know. But anyway, but it was interesting. It was a very interesting experience to kind of systematically think your way through all of these big, potentially disruptive events and understand and parse out the structure of them and the key kind of elements and the things that you could be looking for and other kinds of stuff, which was part of kind of the process that I built into this book. And as I thought my way through all of that, it became very clear that the whole idea of humanity engaging with life off of this planet in some way, and particularly life, the underlying presumption would have to be, I guess, it seems reasonable that that this life was far significantly more advanced than human beings. I mean, if they came from somewhere else or something else, then they obviously had the capability to do that. We don't. And therefore, in almost every way that you can think about, these guys were far more advanced than we were. And as I considered that scenario relative, to all the other ones that were in this book, just became clear to me that there, to my way of thinking at least, is that there is no other scenario that, in terms of the transition and the kind of changing humanity and moving it into a new space and a new human and a new world, those kinds of things. There isn't anything else that is quite like the advent of extraterrestrial life, and then an active, intelligent engagement with these kinds of folks. And so I started running around talking to a lot of people and hunting them up, and in the process got to know just about everybody that was anybody in the UFO business. Just because I really wanted to kind of understand what this was all about, and during that period of time, I got asked to be on the science advisory board for the National Institute of Discovery Science, which was this marvelous organization that was stood up by Bob Bigelow, who was a wealthy man out in Las Vegas, who and I think when we had the thing all together, we had about 16 people on there. I was the only one that didn't have a PhD. They were all these scientists from the national laboratories and people out of the intelligence community and former astronauts and former U.S. senators. And, it was a big spiffy bunch of smart folks. And the subject was like, what did we call it? It wasn't UFOs. It was anomalous aerial phenomenology, I guess is what it was. And we essentially had Bob had a jet, and he essentially said to us, "Who do you want to talk to?" I'll call him up and say, "What's your price?" And I'll send my jet out and pick you up and bring him out here. So I went to Las Vegas, I don't know, 21 times in 3 years for whole weekends, just to systematically listen to and talk about and debate and then analyze and discuss the ins and outs of extraterrestrial life and UFOs and stuff. And so I know a little bit about this kind of stuff, and it was fascinating to think about what the potential implications of it all might be. And the implications are just huge. They are so profound. I also did a study that I've mentioned at one time. Some very high-placed person in the White House got in touch with me and suggested that there was this big secret program that had been going for a long time, where they were thinking about and were going to disclose what alien, UFOs, and the government's been looking at these things for a long time. And I think they were fishing, trying to see what I'd do and trying to kind of smoke me out or whatever it turned out afterwards. But in any case, what I did was I got together about 8 or 9 very high-powered people from out of the Washington area, out of the military and from the intel community and from the press and scientists and other kind of guys, and swore them all to secrecy. And we went through a systematic process throughout one afternoon using some very kind of powerful technology to systematically look at what the implications might be of disclosure or the arrival of an intelligent force from outside. So we systematically looked at the economics and the politics and the religion and everything, and the second and third order kind of implications of the thing. And when you walk your way through all of that, what you find out is, or at least we did, is that I think we had something like 32 different scenarios, different paths through this whole process. There were only 2 of them that didn't blow up in your face one way or another. And those things had to just line up one right after another in order to, the wind had to all blow the right way all the time, or otherwise the thing would go and stock market would crash, or the Christians would riot, or or whatever it turned out to be. There was all kinds of uncertainty and really big stuff. And the reason why this is such an important kind of subject and it's an important area is because when you think about this and you seriously kind of walk your way and think about this, what you find out is that when we get in touch with some other group of beings who are what? 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years more advanced than we are. By definition, almost, it suddenly threatens every major aspect of who we are as human beings. And you can just walk yourself across this whole thing and start and say, first of all, these guys are going to come and they're going to tell you that your history, you don't understand what history is and what happened in the past. And they're going to mess with all of your history. And they're going to tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. And then they're going to mess with your science, because obviously they've got a brand of science and a type of science that lets them get from there to here, that fast, or however long it takes them. And we don't know how to do that. And so we're arrogant enough to say that we think physics is the same everywhere in the universe, and it's impossible that anybody could come from Alpha Centauri here, because it'd take them, 4,000 years, or this foolishness that got you. We're all locked into this box, and these guys would come in and they'd say, "Nah, you haven't got it. There's another way to do this." They'd come and mess with your religion. Because what they tell you is that, your ideas about how this all happened, your cosmology, and this idea that you got these naive ideas that you have about God and so on. No, that's not how it works. It's just really much bigger and broader than you see. And maybe they come and they make it very clear to you that there are multiple universes and this is only one. And, there are some ideas floating around in science and physics about that. But if they came and said, there's a whole lot more going, every one of these things that I just told you about all mess with the essence of who we think we are as beings, the very nature of who we are, the significance of who we are, and so on. They would, they have technology God, do they have technology that you can, you know, they can mess with your brain and give you ideas and make you feel ways and read what you're thinking and all these kinds of things. And whoa, when all of us have heard about those kinds of things and perhaps had, brief encounters with people with unusual capabilities. But when these guys show up and they start running around, it screws with everything. If you get telepathy, if you just got people running around that are reading your mind, I mean, it messes with advertising, it screws with the politics, it just goes to, all kinds of really fundamental things that are all based upon the fact that we think that we can keep a secret in our mind and other people can't figure out what we're talking about. It certainly all these things like astronomy and chemistry even. I mean, I have at one time held in my hand what was told that I was told that was told they were. I was told that it was a fragment of the UFO that was shot down at Roswell, and that they had been studying this thing for years and trying to find out what it was. And what they figured out was that it was what's called a metamaterial, and there were synthesis of elements and compounds that humans have no idea about how to make something that operates like that. If you ever do any research and dig into this kind of space, what you find out is that there's a common kind of description about how their vehicles work. And in fact, that the vehicles are essentially alive. And that the navigator, for instance, the pilot, if you will, melds himself or herself or itself with the vehicle, and so that their brain is a part of the rest of the vehicle, and that's how they steer it, and that's how they send it around. I mean, golly, I mean, we're sitting around blowing smoke out of the back end of airplane engines and rockets, and we think that this is pretty cool, and they're just so far more advanced than that. So anyway, and you can just walk yourself around the economics and the food, all kinds of things that just doesn't work the way they work. And it's almost like in a poor analogy, getting parachuted into the middle of Borneo or something with a bunch of headhunters where everything is different and you don't understand it. And it potentially could go sideways and you have to worry about that. And it takes you a whole long time to try to adapt and trying to figure it, and it's just something like that. And there is just really nothing else that really is as big as that. It gets a little complicated if they're not nice guys, and their interests are not what we think are ours, and because then they've got all kinds of capabilities and things that. So anyway, it's just a really, really, really big deal, and that is a kind of emblematic of the times that we're in, I believe. There's a whole bunch of other kind of wild card things. And we've talked about them, but in the past about, solar flares and any number of other kind of things, rapid climate change. It gets really cold in a hurry. And, they have a long tail and it would have extraordinary impact and for a long time. But there are few things that would kind of not only mess with how we do everything, but the essence of who we are. And you could suppose, you could that did, you know, there are kind of two major ways that people would respond to this, and some would uh, kind of feel completely suppressed and inferior and threatened and so on. And, you know, another group, hopefully you know, us kinds of folks would say, and what a wonderful opportunity to become something new, learn something new, rise to the occasion and such. And so it would probably be rather divisive in terms of how our society and things worked here. And so the whole kind of integration, exposure, disclosure kind of process is a really tricky thing. It's a real minefield that is really got to be navigated and really taken. You'd be very foolish to march into the middle of this thing without really spending a lot of time thinking about it. There's another interesting kind of aspect of this whole thing that is potentially very disruptive. And that is the fact that all of these events, these aliens, these craft and everything may not be real in the terms that we understand them. One of the members of this National Institute of Discovery Science board that I sat on was Jacques Vallée. And Jacques Vallée is a very kind of famous researcher and analyst and author in this space. And Jacques had this novel, certainly in that environment, this novel idea that said that this is all kind of psychological, and that that there certainly is the capability that these kind of images and these experiences and other things could be generated from you know, some other kind of source, a non-standard source for sure, but that isn't physical. You couldn't touch them and such, and that it was something else. And this was not just a kind of a arm's length kind of idea that he had really thought about this and has written some very persuasive books about this kind of idea, this notion. And what you've now opened up is a spectrum of possibilities. It starts all the way from saying that they're putting these ideas in your head and you think that they're real and you can touch them or you can feel them and all that kind of stuff, and all the way out to the other edge where it says that they literally are kind of real in the terms that we understand them, and physical, and people can literally touch them, and they can take you for a ride somewhere if you want to go for a ride, I guess. And so this is a very interesting looking, complicated space. It's becoming clear that governments, and particularly the United States, certainly Russia, probably China, there's some suggestions maybe Brazil, Israel, have had ongoing kind of conversations with representatives from these beings, and then perhaps that they even, you know, are here on the planet and they're all over the place, and that they look like us, and they're kind of an integrated. They're not great numbers of them apparently, but that you know, they're doing their thing, whatever that is, influencing the process, gathering information, whatever it turns out to be. And so it just changes. It's a really big thing, because if you suddenly say, wait a second, there's aliens all over the place, but they look like us and they're reading my mind, and I can't, you know, you could drive you into an interesting corner pretty quickly if you can't kind of deal with all of this. And it becomes again aggravated by the fact that if you find out that the US government and other governments have been dealing with these guys, and maybe even having a bunch of them that are, you know, squirreled away in some underground place, and you know, they're working with us, telling us all kinds of secrets, letting us figure out how to do some of the spooky stuff that they know how to do. And I mean, it suddenly blows open just a Pandora's box kind of thing, to where people start saying, what else have you got that you haven't been told us about? And how in the world, you've betrayed us by knowing all these things and using them against us. And, and you've got energy capabilities that are obviously far in advance in what we've got, that you can extract energy out of the ether or out of the vacuum or whatever it is, because they're certainly not carrying gas tanks around on those vehicles those aircraft they're not really aircraft, they're spacecraft that they're flying around in. And so the whole thing is a very, very interesting. And up until now, I mean, some people would argue with me about this, but up until now, it's been somewhat academic, theoretical, abstract, conceptual, and now it's not. Now, when the U.S. government starts to say, however they do it, and by the way, you don't know for sure what's going on and what the government knows and what they're doing, and this exposure to these people coming out and talking about this. Are they being manipulated? Do they even know if they're being manipulated? Maybe they just think they're doing the right thing. Maybe they've been convinced, I don't know. It's got lots of variables and uncertainty associated with the thing. And so it has big kind of giant implications, and great deal of uncertainty, and it is coming. And it's, you wouldn't be crazy to suggest that, this kind of disclosure, this active engagement might happen within the next year or 2 years or 3 years or something like that. So, I mean, it's like tomorrow in kind of historical times, and in terms of our lives for that matter. I mean, this is exponential in terms of what is happening. And, if they come and show us all kinds of new things and how we can be somebody bigger, better, and how we can see ourselves in the world and reality in bigger ways, then it could be an important, significant kind of push into this new evolutionary jump and this push toward a new world that would, by definition, would operate in a dramatically different way. This is science fiction book or movie kind of land. And you go to you go to the Matrix, you watch the Matrix movie or something like that, and it just, in my case, it just blows your mind and everything. But you cannot make the leap, the bridge between the present and that kind of world, or Blade Runner, which was another famous, favorite of mine. You got this LA situation that's just dysfunctional and everything, and you just, it all makes sense in that kind of a context, but you can't see this bridge between what happens to get you from here to there. Well, that's part of what, if you get a really different, rather rapid new push into a new whole paradigm, a whole new way of understanding and explaining this reality, if that happens in a hurry, it is very interestingly potentially disruptive. And maybe that's the kind of wedge that provides, that it encourages and accelerates the division between the new world and the new people that kind of again rise to the occasion, or those who get carried away by the technology and technocracy and the other kinds of things that are pushing the whole control agenda. And so anyway, that's I think that this whole UFO and alien thing is a very interesting kind of component in this what's going to happen in the next half dozen years at least. And it's only one of a variety of big kind of wedges, driving forces, extraordinary kind of events that are coming downstream, and it'll be a fascinating, really interesting world that comes out of it all.